Hello everyone, and welcome to Retro Game Review, where we talk about narrative games, their gameplay, and what made them as popular as they are today. The first series of the Retro Game Review podcast will focus on the multi-award-winning 2009 game Batman: Arkham Asylum, which is the first of four in the critically acclaimed Arkham series. And in today's episode, we are going to be introduced to how this franchise began, and how Rocksteady Studios made us strike from the shadows and be the Batman. My name is Jake Sweetlove, and this is Retro Game Review. Rocksteady Studios was founded on the 8th of November 2004 by founders Jamie Walker and Sefton Hill. The studio's first official game was Urban Chaos, releasing on the 18th of May 2006. With reviews of 7.9 from IGN and an 8 out of 10 from IMDb, the publishers Eidos Montreal had hoped a new popular company could make great games for them. And not long later, Warner Brothers came knocking with the Batman IP. Eidos immediately knew exactly who to give it to. And in just the space of 2 years, the game was ready. And by August 2009, Batman Arkham Asylum had hit the shelves, and as of September 9th of the exact same year, it had already sold 2 million copies, with the last reported number equating to over 7.5 million sold in 2015. And by 2023, this number most likely is completely off. When the reviews came in for Arkham Asylum, 9s and 10s appeared across the industry. People could finally be Batman. Now, how did the developers achieve this? Well, through using already established lore and creating their own universe from it. The Asylum's gothic design comes from the 1989 graphic novel Arkham Asylum: A Serious House on Serious Earth. The voice actors and writers had all played a key role in the 1992 Batman animated series, with Kevin Conroy as Batman, Mark Hamill as the Joker, and Arlene Sorkin as Harley Quinn, with Paul Dini being the writer. However, before this game became a thing, there was a chance it would have never been made, as Warner Brothers did not own the rights to Batman video games, as they had been sold as a deal years before. However, Pandemic Studios, which was known for the Battlefront franchise, with Battlefront 2 releasing in 2005, the same year as Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, a mistake from Hollywood actor Gary Oldman, who played Jim Gordon in the Batman Begins and Batman the Dark Knight from Christopher Nolan, made a mistake and mentioned the game, saying how good it looked. There was no knowledge of this game, and this put EA into a panic. With a new engine which they were creating, it was a disaster, and after failing twice to release on the date it should have, their deal was voided. Warner Brothers now had the IP, but they knew nothing of what to do with it, so they asked Eidos Montreal, and Eidos knew exactly who should get it. Now sadly, Pandemic Studios would go defunct on the 17th of November 2009. For the first episode of this podcast, I wanted to learn more about the design culture of video games, and especially this game, because its design was very different for the time. Being a comic book, but also being the first Metroidvania Batman game, how did they do it? Well, who's better to ask than someone who does the game design course? How much do you think the game holds up in terms of graphics, but also gameplay?
Overall, I think Arkham Asylum holds up incredibly well, arguably better than City in certain aspects, with the overall style of City being a lot more like grey and monotone, like more similar to the Christopher Nolan movies, like overall like downcast, while Asylum being a lot more like zany and brightly coloured. Overall, like a lot more like of a timeless aesthetic that goes with it, with like the different layers and levels. It's very Metroidvania in that way. Same with like getting the items as you go. It's a classic formula for like the actual gameplay that is like carried over and works incredibly well, and is rarely ever done. Well, up until that point, was rarely ever done in a 3D environment. So the game itself holds up incredibly well.
Well, coming from that, does the comic book like graphics work with this iteration of Batman? And then after it, of course, the Return to Arkham remastered version kind of toned it down a bit and questioned upon if it's better or maybe ruins of the style that was there with Arkham Asylum.
Well, with the style of it, I think they were initially trying to like find their overall like kind of what they were going for. So with Asylum, it was more like we want to get as many people interested in this as we can. So they wanted to cover like a broad range of topics with it. But overall, because City did so well, and City was a lot more like grey and monotone with it, like similar to the movies, because that was like where that became a big thing again. Because the comics were always pretty popular, but like they never really hit like proper mainstream until like the movies came out. And there was the ones before that, but they were like never of them, like none of them kind of reached like the same kind of like level of broad appeal as the Christopher Nolan ones with the whole grey monotone thing. It's more similar to the Tim Burton ones, you know what I mean, with like the bright, vibrant colours on it. But that's probably also why they dialed it down in the Return to Arkham one, because Arkham City is like the most popular one. You can see based on the difference in the covers, like one's like while one's still like kind of greyish and like stormy, it's more like got undertones of blue. While the Arkham City cover is entirely like in black and white, like kind of justify like. But it's also meant to be like a symbolic thing of like that the whole black and white and the morally greyness of it, which is what is like Batman's character is kind of known for, of like whole like is what he's doing good or is it what he's doing like kind of bad. So it kind of goes with that. But overall, I kind of prefer the like kind of hypercolor stylized thing, but because it mixed like the grittiness of it with also like how vibrant it was. It was like a clash of like it didn't make sense, but it does. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like certain parts of the island as well, were, like very grey and like contrasty of like the institutionalization of it. It was like it's very like concrete of like this is like gothic, but then those other parts it was like a mix of like to show how like kind of zany the place was and the people. Well, overall it was pretty mad for the time because it was like the first kind of case of like. It was like simple, but also involved like a lot of different aspects of other combat stuff, like with the button mashing and the timing, and like just how satisfying it was to like hop around. But with this, like same with what you say with the overall graphics looking a bit worse now, it's because what's the way? How do I say it? It was like it was a decent port, but not because the game itself was built for the 360, which had like lower specs and like at the time people had blurrier computers and TVs. So you wouldn't notice that sort of stuff. But it's also one of those things where, like, if you go back, like, 20 years ago, you could look at any, like, game on a console and be like, the graphics are insane. But, like, now that you compare them to modern-day standards, it's, like, a bit worse. So it's like that with every, like, older game, including, like, in the remasters as well. Because they didn't... Unless they, like, rework the whole thing from the ground up, it's always going to be a bit, like, plastered. But then it's, like, a subtle thing in your head of, like, I feel like I would kind of notice that if it wasn't there. You know, like, it would kind of, like, lessen the experience. Because it's like a visible form of progression.
Of course, after free flow combat system, then there's also the whole other side with Predator combat through all the games.
Yeah, with the stealth stuff, okay, kind of that.
Yeah.
Well, that always fits like the Batman vibe of like he's like always like they always want to view him as like a mythos less than a person. Like he wants to be like more animalistic because like that's what scares people. He's like I'm like a hunter and prey kind of deal. So it works incredibly well. It's like what is it? It's like looking back on certain bits of it now, it's a bit like in Asylum, it is a little repetitive. You know, like where it's like, thank God there's gargoyles everywhere.
Yeah.
But overall, it's a really solid mechanic that like works well for the vibe, and they fleshed it out a bit more in City with where they still have like all the gargoyles in the same kind of spots, but you can also like add a bit more to it, and like they. Like part of it was like they improved like because there was a zipline launcher thing in Asylum, but like they made it a lot smoother and like you could use it for takedowns.
Then with that, of course, detective mode. Do you think it can be overused? Like some people keep it on at all times.
I think so. I think like it's a decent mechanic, but like it is very much like you could just keep it on to anytime you're like there we go. But also like the game itself, like you make sure you want. It's one of those things where like it works and it doesn't because like as a game with it, I know that's the thing I want to say is like it makes you feel like Batman, but you don't really do much detective stuff. Like a lot of it's just like the computer does it for you. So that's why like they changed it a little bit later on with like extra bits and like now it also checks this or like this the rewind time one as well was weird in Origins, but they try and like keep it a bit tweaked. But like it's all very like it's the same with like Eagle Vision and that's all very very broken as systems, but also like they want like the average player to be like, just like, I can play this and not be like, I don't know what I'm looking for, and not have to be told. So it works in the best way it could. It is very overused and reliant, but like the alternative would either be that like it would turn away a good amount of like the fans, or like you'd have to like just memorize it. So like it makes sense because it's a very like complicated issue that would have been like kind of hard to fix without like reshifting a lot of like the gameplay.
Yeah.
And like breaking the flow.
Starts with Batman taking the now easily apprehended Joker into the asylum. Surrounded by multiple armed security guards, however, as the guards and Batman leave the Joker to the doctors, a now helpless Batman watches as the asylum turns into the Joker's madhouse, and as the Joker escapes, Batman must stop the Joker before everyone on the island and in Gotham is put into grave danger. For this section of the podcast, I will also be interviewing Dylan, who has 100%ed the game a few times himself. I'll be asking him questions about the first 30 minutes of Arkham Asylum, and his thoughts and feelings as he played it.
When did you first play Batman Arkham Asylum?
I think I must have played it maybe first time in 2000 and maybe 19. Oh no, actually no. Yes, scratch that. It was actually 2020. I remember actually now, because I wanted to just because during the lockdown, because when lockdown happened, I just needed to occupy myself, so I decided to play them games because it actually just happened after my birthday, so I had birthday money, so I just thought, why not?
What did you like about the game, and was there anything that you disliked?
I definitely liked like the whole atmosphere of the game. It kind of like felt a bit kind of like a thriller game because I had all those different jump scares in there. Obviously, I liked how we get to see loads of different characters and like all the Riddler trophies and Riddler actual riddles. We all get to see like references to all different characters, even some that actually aren't even in the Arkham games. But it's still kind of cool to see them. But I didn't really like. I just felt a bit like the ending was a bit weak, because and like the final boss fight and also like the boss fights throughout, they just seem kind of all similar.
When the game starts with the Batmobile, how does this set the tone of the game?
I feel like it does easily kind of set the tone of the game when you see it's all rainy. The game, you see it quite as like proper rough city because it's all got, you see all the trash bags and all the bins and stuff, and you can see Batman just brooding there and just Joker. You can see him all cut, all locked up and stuff. So it's kind of cool. Like, it does set up as being like this kind of dark, gritty kind of tone.
As we see the asylum for the first time, what were your thoughts?
I definitely thought it was like quite creepy and kind of cool. It kind of does set the tone for the game. Like, I'm thinking, oh yeah, this is gonna be like, I'm gonna get scared in this game because, like, it's like you say, it looks quite old fashioned and quite gothic, but and you see inside though, obviously it has tried to modernise it a bit with those like laser door things, but like I said though, it still looks quite old fashioned and stuff, so it's quite creepy. I think it's actually really good because like you can tell when you first meet Frankie Balls, obviously he's quite aggressive with Joker, so you can kind of connote that maybe he's like one of those, maybe he's like not a really good guard, like he's not a good person. And obviously you see Killer Croc for the first time, like he looks like an actual monster, because usually in other games and stuff, when you've seen him previously, like the Lego Batman game, he's just normal size, like the same kind of thing as like literally, but obviously yeah, but it is Lego, but but you wouldn't really expect Croc to be that big. Like, you're actually thinking, wow, he's actually a monster. With Aaron Cash, obviously, you kind of get the step. You can obviously do like see that he's got the claw hand, and you can tell like he's quite respected because how people do listen to him and stuff. And Warden Sharp, you can definitely tell like there's something a bit going on with him. I don't know what it is, but he does seem suspicious from the get-go. I don't know if that's
something else in those 8 minutes is the Joker pretty much explains his escape plan.
Yeah.
So, what did you think of his escape plan?
I thought it was like quite smart, to have that whole. I can't remember if it was a riot or like I think it was a fire at Blackgates, which led nearly all of his men
As the Joker escapes and we are thrust into our first combat section, what were your thoughts?
I definitely thought it was quite cool because, that's when we actually finally start to get to fight the criminals and stuff. I do feel like it was quite, it wasn't as like good as I was expecting, because I do feel like the combat felt a bit clunky, a bit, but overall it was good as well, because it kind of does. It's kind of like a good way to introduce you to a tutorial on how to fight the different criminals and stuff. So it was pretty good. Yeah, I do feel like that's kind of good because I feel like it does teach you about. It does like give you a quick little rundown of how to use stealth, how to use the gargoyles to evade detection, and with the Titan, it does teach how to fight them, which is very useful because they're like the only boss fights throughout the whole game. Yeah, I thought it was well weird because I remember because there's like a weird little side effects when their bones actually start coming out of their bodies, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I was actually like, because it really like, that's grim, that. Plus, but also at the same time I was thinking, oh god, I'm gonna have to fight Bane, aren't I? Because it clicked in my head that this must also have something to do with Bane because of his Venom stuff. So I was thinking, nah, Joker ain't this ain't going to be like some weird thing with Joker's just managed to develop this random thing. This is come from Bane or something.